Hello everybody, I'm Theo Hartzell. In today's video, I want to look at the Bible to analyze in the Ten Commandments and also Jesus, but in the Ten Commandments when it said, thou shalt not kill, what does that mean in the Hebrew? Does that include any and every form of killing, accidental death, intentional death? And how is that separate from the word murder? The King James Bible translated as kill, while other translations translate it as murder. When Jesus repeated that command, the Ten Commandments in the New Testament in Matthew chapter 5, did he say thou shalt not kill, or was he saying thou shalt not murder? In this video, we're going to look at the Hebrew and the Greek, and we're going to dig into it, and we're going to answer the question, is the Bible saying thou shalt not kill or thou shalt not murder? Now, the reason I want to make this video is because I want to make a series about, can a Christian defend themselves? Also, what does it mean to resist not evil? What does it mean to turn the other cheek? Are we completely passive and we can't defend ourselves? Do we have to be victims and allow our families to be victims, even in front of our very own eyes? Because of these passages, I am going to show you that they have been totally misrepresented, mistranslated, misunderstood by Christians, and I want to look at the Hebrew and Greek to help you understand what the Bible and Jesus were actually saying. So with all of that being said, let me just jump straight into this video. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to look at and differentiate between what it means to kill or what it means to murder in the Bible. And when you turn to Exodus chapter 20, verse 13, it says, thou shalt not kill. That word for kill right there is the Hebrew word 7523, ratsach, or some people also pronounce it rasah, and that's how I'm going to pronounce it, rasah. But it says, thou shalt not rasah. So what does this word in the Ten Commandments, rasah, mean? It means to murder, to slay, to kill. Listen to this. Premeditated, as avenger, to assassinate. It is a verb meaning to murder, to slay, or to kill, and is used to indicate premeditated murder. When you look at other Bible translations, and I'll just name off a few here, you shall not commit murder. Do not commit murder. Thou shalt not murder. You shall not murder. You shall not murder. You shall not murder. You shall not murder. Do not murder. Never murder. And I could go on looking at all different kinds of translations, but many of the modern day translations interpret it to be correctly rendered as murder. The King James Version Bible is the one that rendered it as kill. However, when you look at this Hebrew word, rasha, in its context, and look at how it was used, it's predominantly always used in the sense of premeditated or unlawful or unsanctioned killing of another person. Now, I know that some people can say, oh yeah, Brother Theo, but it was used one or two times over here in this way and that way, and you can do that with any word in any language of any people of any time. So you have to look at it in context. And the overall, overreaching, overwhelming sense of this word is in the sense of intentional murder. Now, sometimes I like to give people my own definition of a word just to kind of paraphrase it and sum it up to make it very simple and understandable. When I am talking about the word rasha, or when you're talking about murder in general, the way that I would biblically define murder is that it is an unsanctioned, unlawful, unjustified taking of another person's life. It is not an accidental or an unintentional taking of another person's life. Now, some people will say that this word or this verse implies that there can be no form of killing whatsoever, that all killing of any form is forbidden. However, if you say that, and if you go down that viewpoint, then you would also have to say that God, by the Ten Commandments, is saying that you cannot even have an accident. You can't even have an unintentional accident. There can't be any car wrecks. Can't be any hunting accidents, can't be anything go wrong, cannot be any work-related accidents where somebody, if they were cutting in the woods, the axe head goes flying off, hits somebody in the head and unintentionally kills them. If you believe that thou shalt not kill means any form of killing whatsoever, then God was actually forbidding you to have any accident whatsoever. You can't have any car accidents. Nothing can go wrong. I think, brothers and sisters, you have to understand that that could not even be the case, because that means that every person in every circumstance and every situation would have to be perfect, and there could be no room for error whatsoever. Not only that, if this verse is saying that you cannot kill in any form or any fashion, then it would be a direct violation of the commands that God gave the people for them to execute people for capital crimes, for sins that they were committing, like rape and murder and kidnapping and things that were commanded by God, that you're going to execute these people for committing these crimes. Now, we're going to cover more of that as we go in this video. But first, let me just really delve into the difference between thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not murder, and the differences between the Hebrew word nakah and ratsach. And when you look at Numbers chapter 35, and we're going to start at verse 11, and it says, "Then ye shall appoint you cities to be cities of refuge for you, that the slayer may flee thither, which killeth any person at unawares." Notice that again, at unawares. Now, the reason I want to highlight this verse is because we're talking about the cities of refuge, and people can flee there if there was an accident. Something I want you to notice right here. Did you see that it said, any person unawares may flee thither? So in other words, a person fleeing to the city of refuge is someone that killed somebody unawares or unintentionally. That word for killeth right there is the Hebrew word 5221, which is the Hebrew word nakah, which means to beat or to smite, to strike. It means to kill or slay a man or beast. It means to smite, attack, destroy, conquer, subjugate, ravage. Now, the reason that I'm highlighting this is because that word nakah right there for killing a person unawares is not the Hebrew word that we just saw in the Ten Commandments that said thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not ratsach, which was the Hebrew word 7523. And some people will look at that and say, okay, there it is. Both of these words are working together to describe murder, but it does not mean that the Ten Commandments was saying thou shalt not kill. It was saying thou shalt not murder. And the reason I'm saying this is because we're going to look at this in context. Notice first off that it says the slayer that killed a person, nakah, unawares. In other words, it was an accident. It was unintentional. But notice what it says in the very next verse, which will prove my point. In verse 12, it says, the very next verse, it says, "And they shall be unto you cities for refuge from the avenger, that the manslayer," there it is, 7523, "that the murderer die not," listen to this, "until he stand before the congregation in judgment." This verse is saying that the person is accused of murder or manslaughter, ratsach, until they have a court appearance and can present their case and the witnesses testify against them and the evidence is presented, just like in our modern day judicial system. The person was accused of murder and therefore murder was applied to them, even though it was an unintentional killing, until they came before a jury, if you will, a court system to present their case to be tried. And this is going to be very important, and this is going to open a lot of your eyes when you see the coming verses up, because going on in Numbers chapter 35, verse 15, it says, "These cities shall be a refuge for the children of Israel and for the stranger and for the sojourner among you, that every one that killeth," nakah, "any person unaware may flee thither." That is the exact same word for unintentional killing that we've already covered. It is not the word used in the Ten Commandments. Looking in verse 16, "And if he smite," and this is talking about the one accused of murder again, ratsach, "if the murderer smite him with an instrument of iron so that he die, he is a murderer. Rasha 7523. The murderer shall be put to death. The person who committed the rasha, which was an unlawful, unjustified, unsanctioned killing, will be considered guilty of murder and shall be put to death. And I also want you to notice this, but the person who was the murderer ran to the city of refuge, but they had to have a trial, go before a jury. The evidence was presented. The witnesses testified in the case, and they were found guilty of murder. The person that was found guilty of murder was not allowed to stay in the city of sanctuary, but they were commanded to be executed or put to death. And this again goes back to what I'm emphatically saying, that the Ten Commandments is in no way saying that thou shalt not kill. Because right here, you are given a command that if someone kills another person on intention, on purpose, and even flees to a city of refuge, you're going to have a trial. They're going to go before a jury. And when they're found guilty, you're going to bring them outside the city gates and you're going to execute them and put them to death. That was God's command, and that's exactly what they did. Going on, in verse 17, it says, "And if he smite him with throwing a stone, wherewith he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death." Now, I want you to notice something first off right here. It says, "And if he smite with a throwing stone," so it's just another form or way that he killed the guy, "wherewith he may die." Notice that phrase, wherewith he may die. The intention that he threw the stone with was intentional murder, wherewith he may die. He had the intent to kill him, that he may die. Listen to what it says. He is a murderer. Rasha 7523. The murderer, Rasha, shall be put to death. The reason this is important and the reason that I'm highlighting this is because this is showing that in connection, this person threw a stone at another person on purpose with the intent to kill him. That's why it said it like it did. And that person was found to be guilty, and therefore that person is now considered to be a murderer, and they take him outside the city gates and execute him or put him to death. Let's look at the next verse because we're looking at all this in context. Verse 18 says, "Or if he smite him with a hand weapon of wood, wherewith he may die," notice that again, wherewith he may die, the intention was to kill him, "and he die, he is a murderer." Rasha. The murderer shall surely be put to death. Verse 19, "The revenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meeteth him, he shall slay him." Now let me say a couple of things right here. When a person was killed, whether it was an unintentional or accidental death, which was the nakah, or whether it was a ratsach, which was an intentional murder, they could run to the city of refuge and try to hide there and wait for the trial and the jury process, the judicial system to run its course. If the avenger of blood, the next of kin, or whoever it was that was going to take revenge, caught that person before they got to the city of refuge, they were allowed to kill that person for the murder that they committed. However, if they got to the city of refuge, they were presented with a jury, a trial was presented, the witnesses came forward, the evidence was presented before everyone, and all this was taken care of. And if it was found that it was an intentional, on-purpose murder, that person was executed or killed. On the other hand, if it was an unintentional or accidental killing, a nakah, that person was allowed to stay in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. They were forced to stay in isolation in that city and were not allowed to leave. And with all of that being said, now I want to move into the New Testament. Did Jesus say, "Thou shalt not kill," or was Jesus saying, "Thou shalt not commit murder"? And so you have to look at it and say, okay, well, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and the New Testament was written in Greek. So how do we bridge the gap between the Hebrew and translate it over into the Greek? And the way that that happened was through the Septuagint Bible. The Septuagint was where they took the Old Testament Hebrew words, Hebrew scriptures, and translated them into the Greek language so that the Jews, or the people that only could read and understand Greek, would be able to understand what the Old Testament Hebrew words were saying. So all you have to do is look at a Septuagint, and you can take the Hebrew word and realize what the corresponding Greek word was. The reason this is important is because when you take that Old Testament Hebrew word from the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill, ratsach, and you bring it over into the New Testament, into the Greek, it is the Greek word phanu, which is also the Greek word for murder or murderer. When you look in Acts chapter 3, Verse 14, and this is talking about Jesus, it says, "But ye denied the Holy One and the just, and desired a murderer to be granted unto you." That word for murderer right there is the Greek word 5406 phanus, which means a murderer, an intentional homicide. This was saying that Barabbas, who was given up in place of Jesus, was a murderer who was guilty of intentional murder. Another verse I can give you is in Revelations chapter 21, verse 8. "But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers," there it is again, that Greek word, 5406, phanus, "and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." When you look at what Jesus said about the Ten Commandments in Mark chapter 10, verse 19, it says, "Thou knowest the commandments." So we're talking about the Ten Commandments right here. We're going to get a big clue right here. "Do not commit adultery. Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Defraud not. Honor thy father and mother." That word for kill right there is the Greek word G5407 phanuo, which means to commit murder or to kill unjustly. It is from the exact same root word. All of these words, phanu, phanus, phanuo, they're all telling or describing the exact same thing, and that is to murder, to intentionally homicide, to take someone's life on purpose. It is murder. And also looking at Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, it says, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment." Both of those words for kill right there are both G5407, the same exact Greek word, phanuo, which means to commit murder or to kill unjustly. The reason that this is important is because looking at the New Testament, what Jesus Christ said, the word phanuo is the word for murder, to kill someone intentionally, on purpose. And when you compare it to the Old Testament word for "thou shalt not kill," it was supposed to be the word murder. Jesus Christ and the Ten Commandments are both saying, "Thou shalt not commit murder." And we all understand and know what murder is. It's to take a life from someone on purpose with intention because of something that is unlawful or unjustified or unsanctioned. In other words, it's because of your own lustful desires in heart. It's not because you're trying to protect yourself. Jesus was not saying that you can't protect yourself. The Ten Commandments were not saying that you cannot protect yourself. The Ten Commandments were not forbidding you that for there not to be an accidental death on the workplace or in a car or any other way that someone might be killed unintentionally and not on purpose. In fact, there's so many stories I can't even tell you about a family member accidentally killing the other one, or two friends being out somewhere in the woods and the gun went off and accidentally killed the other one. And I'm going to get into that more in talking about turning the other cheek and how to deal with these situations. But suffice it to say, the whole reason that I'm saying this is because Jesus never said, "Thou shalt not kill." That's the King James translation. Many of the other translations say "thou shalt not murder." And the Greek emphasizes and says, "Thou shalt not commit murder. Thou shalt not commit homicide." Jesus and the Ten Commandments were saying, "Thou shalt not commit murder." You shall not kill another person because of your own lustful desires, your lustful passion in an unsanctioned and unjustified and an unlawful way. Do not commit murder. That's what Jesus Christ was saying, and that's what the Ten Commandments were also saying, putting the words of the Hebrew and the Greek in context to understand what the New Testament scriptures were saying. And I know I'm wound up, but it's because I just get so excited about the Word of God, and I love interpreting the scriptures for you and helping you to understand. But let me kind of summarize everything that we've talked about. The Old Testament scriptures and passages emphatically say that there was a word that they predominantly used for unintentional, accidental deaths, whether workplace related, civil matters, whatever it was an unintentional killing. It was called a nakah. You could flee to the city of refuge there, and you could have your trial, your jury, judicial process, and be proven innocent of intentional murder. However, if you committed ratsach, or intentional murder, you could flee to the city of refuge if you want, but if you were proved to be guilty, they would bring you out and kill you and execute you because you committed ratsach, or intentional murder, or intentional homicide for whatever debased, lustful reason was in your heart, and you didn't go through due judicial process and take care of it in a right manner. And there were many sins that God listed that if you commit any of these sins, you're going to be brought out and you're going to be executed for capital punishment because you broke the law. The reason that God put these in place was to protect people from becoming victims and to establish a civil law through society where people who were small, insignificant, frail, and could not defend themselves could be protected from predators. It also protected people and gave them a wait, time out, hold on. I know the consequences are grave for this, so I better rein myself in and restrict myself because I don't want to die if I commit this sin. It was to protect people all over the place from doing things that were wrong. And then when you come over into the New Testament and you look at what Jesus was saying, thou shalt not kill, the Hebrew translated into the Greek is the Greek word phanu, which is the Greek word to mean murder or homicide or intentional murder. So when Jesus was saying, thou shalt not kill, he was really saying, thou shalt not commit murder. Jesus was reinforcing that the Ten Commandments were saying, thou shalt not commit murder. Those people who say that Jesus and the Ten Commandments were saying, thou shalt not kill in any form or any fashion, were taking the scriptures in the Hebrew and the Greek completely out of context. And to say that the Ten Commandments and Jesus forbade killing in any form or any fashion, and then there's going to be capital punishment for that, or you're going to be put to death, means that any person who committed any accident in any way or any form or were involved in any way would be guilty of death, because even though it was an accident, they still committed a killing. But the Bible was differentiating and saying, wait, sometimes accidents happen. And because sometimes unintentional accidents happen and they're not on purpose, and if it happens and it's not on purpose and it was unintentional, then we don't have to execute or kill this person. We don't have to execute capital punishment against them and take their life because what happened was an accident. Amen. God bless you. I know that this has been a very heavy subject because you're talking about so many things that could affect your life in so many different ways and different avenues. And the odds are that some of us have even been impacted by this on one way or the other. But the purpose of making this video was that as I wanted to rightly divide the word of the truth and to show you biblically what were the Ten Commandments actually saying, and biblically what was Jesus Christ actually saying, so that when we're talking about the Word of God, we actually know what the Hebrew and the Greek actually said. Until next time, I want you to know that I love and appreciate you and thank you for all your prayers. God bless you. I love you. Until next time, you pray for me and I'll be praying for you. God bless you. I love you and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.